Oh, Saida, we're going to start. Saida?
Yes, I'm here.
Great.
Good
Maybe you
evening,
could-
everyone. A few notes for you, particularly if this is your first meeting with us. You will notice that you are muted and unable to mute yourself. After each presentation, members of the committee will call on the public or members of the public who wish to speak, and you can ask to be recognized by raising your virtual hand. You can do that by going to the reactions button at the bottom of your screen and selecting raise hand. It's important not to raise your physical hands or to wave at the screen because we may not be able to see you among the participants. If you are on a phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute. Once you're recognized by the co-chair, I will unmute you and you may be prompted to confirm unmuting on your device. If you are using an older version of Zoom, you can access the raise hand feature by clicking the participants button on the menu at the bottom of your screen and selecting raise hand. The chat function is available for technical support only, not to ask questions of the co-chairs. You can send me a chat if you're having any technical issues and I can help troubleshoot things with you. Jane? Anthony?
Thank you so much, Saida.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. This is the July meeting of the Landmarks Committee of Community Board 8. We are thrilled to have Anthony Kahn, who's going to be the co-chairing the meeting with me tonight. He is stepping in from David Halpern, who is not available. We are going to hear 4 applications this evening. We will hear from the applicant. We will hear then from the public, as Saida said. Then we will go to the members of the committee who are present and other board members. Then we will formulate a resolution and vote on it, which will be presented to at our full board meeting, which is this coming Wednesday evening, again on Zoom. We are here to vote on the context and appropriateness of each application, either as an individual landmark or such as the Guggenheim, which is on the agenda tonight, or within a historic district. So with that, we're going to start. Anthony, it's all yours.
Great. Thank you, Jane. The first application is for 1014 Fifth Avenue, which is in the Metropolitan Museum Historic District. It is KARO Architects, LLP. It's a Beaux-Arts style townhouse designed by Welch, Smith, and Provost and constructed in 1906 to 1907. Application is for replacement of all front windows, replacement of entry door, horizontal extension on the 3rd and 4th floor in the rear, addition of a 5th floor roof terrace in the rear, and new landscaping in the rear yard. And who is here for the applicants?
Harriet and Melanie. Melanie, confirm unmuting.
I think I unmuted, did I?
You did.
You did.
Great, thank you. So now I don't know how to take my hand down. So, oh, lower hand, thank you. And Harriet will be running the slide deck.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're ready for us to start, we can. So thanks so much for having us. Appreciate your time. My name is Melanie Myers. I'm a partner at Fried Frank, Harris Shriver, and Jacobson, representing the applicant. The application is for a certificate of appropriateness, as was mentioned, for renovations and upgrades to the property located at 1014 Fifth Avenue, located between East 82nd, East 83rd Streets within the Metropolitan Museum Historic District. I am joined tonight by Anton Klix from the German Consulate General on behalf of ownership, and representatives from the design team of David Chipperfield Architects, the Paradis Group, and Caro Architects, and they will be doing the bulk of the presentation. The property is owned by the Federal Republic of Germany, and while originally built as a 6-story residential townhouse, it has been used for more than half a century as a cultural institution. The purpose of the project is to restore, renovate, and upgrade the building to help continue the civic and cultural use of the building into the future. If you could go to the next slide, please. I just wanted to give a very brief overview of the presentation. So Matt Ball of David Chipperfield Architects will briefly discuss the building and describe the project program and goals. Then Harriet Bartlett of the Chipperfield office will describe the design elements that are part of the certificate of appropriateness request. We broke them down slightly differently than what we heard before, but I think we'll cover the same things. The elements include repairs and renovations, and actually we can go to the next slide, to the front facade and forecourt, changes to the rear facade, including an enlargement that regularizes the rear building profile, and changes to the sidewalk and rooftop mechanical and as well as bulkhead areas. Following the presentation, we will be happy to answer any questions. We very much appreciate your time, and I will turn it over to Matt. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Melanie. Hello, everybody on Zoom. I hope you can hear me okay. So yes, I'm Matt Ball, Project Director from David Chipperfield Architects. I'm going to give you all a bit of a brief context for the project before passing over to Harriet, who will take you through the details. So a brief history of the building first. 1014 and 1015 Fifth Avenue were built as a pair of speculative townhouses by Welch, Smith and Provost, as we heard. In 1926, James W. Gerard, the US ambassador to Germany, moved into 1014 and significantly proceeded to make some substantial changes on the lower 2 floors to the rear, adding 2 large entertaining rooms on first and second floors. We'll see some more on this later. And then right at the end of the 1920s, number 1015 was demolished to make way for the co-op residential buildings that stand there today. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, thanks. So in 1960, the house was bought by the German government from the family of James W. Gerard, and soon after, in 61, was opened as Goethe House, which became a sort of key player in the cultural scene of the Upper East Side, with a program of exhibitions and performances, and attended by notable personalities such as Andy Warhol and Basquiat and so on. So a whole cohort of artists and thinkers. If you go to the next slide, please, Harriet. Today, or well, rather after nearly 50 years, in 2009, the Goethe Institute moved out and relocated to south of the city, and the building was sort of designated as unfit for purpose. And then in 2017, 1014 Inc. Was founded as a non-for-profit US organization, and plans were conceived to sort of try and rekindle the building's cultural life and activities, and in a sense, bring it back to life. So that's where we stand today. That was good for us and hopefully for the neighborhood. And if I just now touch on the sort of key aims of the project. Thank you, Harriet. So the sort of primary goal, as I said, is to try and bring the house back to life as a cultural institutes, and that will comprise public spaces on the lower 2 floors, such as a reception room, a community room that opens onto the garden at the rear, and then on the 2nd floor, a series of rooms for exhibitions and events and gatherings and so on. In the middle part of the building, levels 3 and 4, are office spaces and meeting room, and also the new common room for the whole facility. And then the top 2 floors will provide 6 residential apartments for scholars who can stay for up to 6 months at a time, and they will reside here and do research projects and indeed produce content that will then be showcased in the lower floors of the building in the, let's say, the public rooms. Go on to the next slide, please. Yeah, so as I alluded to earlier, the existing building has some rather magnificent rooms, including the one pictured here, the auditorium, which is on the 2nd floor facing the garden, the rear garden. This was one of the additions by the former ambassador, James W. Gerard, and naturally it is our intention to, restore this room, retain this interest in historic fabric, and in a sense open up these rooms to make them accessible to all, to be enjoyed as part of a program of public events such as lectures and concerts and gatherings and so on. Go to the next slide, please. Now, I should say that a major part of the renovation project is making the building fit for purpose. So that includes introducing new star cores and a structure type elevator and making the building code compliant in a sense. But part of our renovation also comprises the addition of 2 new spaces, a new common room space, which is on the 3rd floor and is a double height space. And so it spans between 3rd and 4th. And then on the 5th floor, a scholars kitchen, which opens onto an enclosed roof terrace overlooking the rear garden. This section just shows the sort of geometry of that. So that the dark gray is literally the new volume added onto the existing, which represents an area of around 2,500 square feet gross terms. And I should just say, apart from the 2 new spaces, as part of the new infrastructure, that there will be a bulkhead on the roof, which is where the lift overrun will sort of come up. Sorry, I was just getting a bit distracted there. Thanks, Harriet. If you could just go to the next slide. And this is the final slide of my section. And this shows an impression of the new common room space on the 3rd floor, and I think what's significant for us, the designers, and also for the project, is that what we add, our new layer, is very much in the spirit of the existing house, in the spirit, in a sense, of the alterations made by the former ambassador, and also in the spirit of generosity and openness that was offered by the Goethe House as it was back in the day. So that's the sort of vision of the project, and I'll hand over to Harriet now, who can take you through the details of the certificate of appropriateness request. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to walk you through elements of the refurbishment associated with the certificate of appropriateness request. And we've divided it up into 4 main sections. So starting first with the west facade on 5th Avenue, then to the east facade in the rear, the north and south facades, and then the roof as well. So starting first with the west facade facing 5th Avenue, we've collected and analyzed the original drawing material from 1906 to better understand the building and also to try to understand the original design intent for the townhouse. The key takeaways for us is that the original building had a more clearly defined front yard area, delineated by a generous front stoop and external light well stair. it was designed in the Beaux-Arts style, and much of the original limestone facade detailing, copper mansard roof, and metalwork still exists today. It was really important for us to untangle and to try to determine what is truly the original condition. What we soon learned is that the archive drawings show a different condition to the as-built condition. And you can see the archive drawing on the left shows a kind of greater detail or kind of division to the windows to what was in fact built. And you can see from the photograph from 1912 in the middle that the windows had kind of larger window panes than the original archive drawings. And we understand that the condition today is similar to that of the photograph in the middle. And that's our understanding of the original condition. And something to note is the windows in place today were in fact from a later alteration from the 90s, but we understand that they tried to kind of replace in kind the original condition, which you can see in the middle. So we're proposing to replace and update all of the existing windows in kind to improve the quality and also the thermal performance of the windows. Something to note on the upper floors, on the 4th and 5th floors, these windows, existing windows, are sash windows, but we will be replacing them to be side hung. But the actual kind of exterior appearance of the windows would be the same, but we're proposing to make them side hung in order to improve the air tightness and again, the thermal performance. So alongside the window replacement, we're also looking to improve the front area of 1014 in order to reinstate a more defined front entrance, as well as a number of necessary repair works. So the drawing on the left is the existing elevation, and on the right is the proposed elevation. So this is also, as I said, alongside necessary repair works. We've worked with our facade and structural engineer consultants to appraise the current condition of the facade and develop a specification of repair works. So we've, for example, I'll just pick out a few. We want to investigate the cause of some of the displaced stone. We'd look to replace copper sheets on the mansard roof where it's failing and also improve the waterproofing. We'd look to repoint areas of deteriorated mortar. And we'd also look to kind of gently clean the limestone facade where there's staining with steam cleaning as well. And looking at the windows in a little bit more detail, you can see we've drawn out two typical window conditions, so the casement window and the sash window. And the drawings on the right demonstrate how the actual kind of external detailing and appearance of the windows would be maintained from the existing to the proposed, but we're trying to improve the kind of thermal performance. And essentially we're kind of improving the kind of non-visible kind of hidden jambs of the windows and how they meet the existing walls. And then alongside the kind of details of the facade and window repair work, we were also proposing to improve the landscape design in the front area. And it was really important for us to understand the original condition. And you can see here, like I kind of described earlier, there was a very well-defined front area, particularly with a limestone stoop, an external light well and service entrance. And I think our position is that this created a more kind of gradual threshold from public to private, as well as a semi-defensible space, which was clearly connected to the townhouse and separate to the public sidewalk. And then moving to the current condition today, there have been a number of alterations since the 1906 townhouse. And as Matt mentioned, there was kind of a series of quite major renovations in the 1920s where we once had the external light well stair and the stoop. These have both been moved to the interior. So the external stair to the basement has moved inwards. The window has then moved inwards as well to accommodate that stair. And the external stoop is now part of an interior vestibule. And our thinking is that this leaves this kind of loosely defined kind of sidewalk space and a very sharp transition between public and private. So we're proposing to reinstate a more defined front area entrance, and the entrance would be defined by a limestone landscape, which runs from exterior to interior and would essentially be kind of sensitive and similar to the existing limestone facade. And this landscape would be composed of a number of elements, particularly a new bench, a new entrance gate, a new canopy, and a vitrine, which would then display information on the events taking place at 1014. And it was really important for us that this was clearly a civic landscape, and we're bringing back to life the townhouse as a cultural place. Whilst many of the neighbors have quite dense greenery in their front gardens, we seek to kind of borrow that greenery in the landscape and kind of embrace this civic limestone landscape in the front of this kind of reinvigorated cultural place. So as you can see, this is the photograph of the condition today, where we have this kind of loosely defined sidewalk, and you can see where the window is being set back on the left. And this is what we're proposing. So I'll just run through the kind of elements I was describing: the limestone bench to the left, and then the new entrance gate, a steel and glass entrance gate. And also we wanted to introduce a canopy, a steel and glass canopy, but to kind of signify this as a newly reinvigorated kind of cultural building. It was important for us in the design of the canopy that it didn't block the kind of intricate cartouche detailing of the limestone above, and that it also, there's alignment with the rustication of the facade. And then as well, you can see there's this kind of slender vitrine to the right of the entrance door, which would be backlit, and it would display information on the events and talks taking place at 1014. And you can see in a little bit more detail the elevation of what I was describing. And something to note here is the kind of, we've lifted kind of clues from the existing facade, the kind of Beaux-Arts style limestone detailing in the way that we've designed the bench. And we wanted to kind of reinterpret some of the details of the existing building in the front yard area. And you can see the section through the front yard, and there's little elements of the bench that we wanted to develop so that it didn't feel too kind of inward looking. And we wanted to introduce this kind of leaning side of the bench that would kind of interact with Fifth Avenue and allow you to kind of lean on the other side of the bench and face the Met. In terms of the materials, it would be a kind of simple palette of limestone, as I said, on the paving and the bench running from exterior to interior. And we're proposing a black and steel metalwork to the entrance canopy, and then glass, a single pane glass and steel new entrance gate. And this is how it would come together in the front yard. And then moving to the east facade in the rear, facing the kind of internal courtyard of the block. The works to the east facade are primarily comprised of refurbishment to the levels 1 and 2 on the lower floors, replacing existing windows and undertaking necessary repairs to existing brickwork, removing the kind of later addition conservatory. And then on the upper floors from levels 3 to 6, as Matt mentioned, there would be an enlargement that would accommodate the common room space. And that would be made possible by removing some of the existing outriggers, which are the setbacks on the existing building that you see today. So this is the existing east facade condition. We'd look to remove all of the existing fire escape stairs. And as I said, the kind of existing conservatory space and trellis. And this is what we're proposing for the renovated east facade. As I said, we're kind of embracing this patchwork of existing brickwork. So we'd retain the red brick on the lower levels, the kind of yellow colored brick on level 2. And then we're introducing a light kind of honey sandy colored brick for the new walls above. And you can see in in a little bit more detail some of the elements. So it would be a hardwood pergola for the trellis and the private terrace above. We're also looking to introduce a retractable fabric awning to the large common room window for shading and privacy. There'll be large curtains within the common room and triple glazed thermally broken steel windows in a kind of MHB Hope style windows to the new elements, particularly the common room. And here you can see in a little bit more detail some of the existing materials and the proposed brickwork. We want to, we want to pick up some of the existing hues of the existing brickwork, but yeah, it to be slightly a kind of lighter tone. It was also important for us to demonstrate that the enlargement on the upper floors is not visible from the neighboring alleyways. And we've undertaken a kind of analysis of this to double check and can confirm that it's not visible from the adjacent streets. And then just rounding up the north and south facades, you can see today the existing conditions in the neighboring kind of alleyway courtyards. So on the left is the south facade where we have a dark red brick and kind of coining detail. And then in the north facade, we have the existing stucco, which is definitely in need of repair. So very, very simply, you can see the existing condition today on the west, where we have the existing outriggers and where we're proposing the new walls on the right-hand side. It would be in the light colored, the kind of honey-colored brickwork to the new common room space, and also where we have a winter garden, which is a kind of internal garden space. We're proposing a glass block wall, which would meet the 2-hour fire rating of the lot line, but also be kind of translucent and offer a level of privacy, both to the interior of 1014 and the neighboring buildings. And then on the south elevation, you can see the existing outriggers on the left, and these would then be replaced with the new enlargement on the upper floors, which again would be in the light honey-colored brick. And then I'll finish quickly on the roof and the kind of roof landscape above and what we're proposing to replace. So this is the existing roof layout, and we'll be removing the existing stair and elevator bulkheads, the existing water tower and the existing mechanical equipment. And then we would be replacing it with a green roof and a kind of planted trellis above the private roof terrace. And we'd also have new mechanical equipment, which we are looking to site kind of make as small as possible. We've been working with the mechanical consultants in developing that. And then this is a study demonstrating that the new equipment is not visible from either Fifth Avenue or the top steps of the Met. Yeah. And then that's really it. That's our summary of the works proposed for the refurbishment. And we'd be happy to open to questions.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. It was a very thorough presentation. So if there are members of the public, I see, I guess, 2, 3. Okay. So first, we'll call on you in order. Saida, if you could unmute Anik.
Anik, confirm unmuting.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Anik Wolf. I'm a current resident of 1010 Fifth Avenue, which is the building directly next to or the south of the building. I've lived here with my family for 28 years. I believe this is a moment of important historical importance for the neighborhood, which me and my family have been an integral part of. I wanted to make a couple of points, regarding the proposal. Regarding the proposed facade of the building, I think it's a real travesty to think that you're proposing to modify the beautiful Beaux-Arts townhouse by replacing the extraordinary antique iron door with a modern one, which I think is pretty insignificant compared to what's there right now. Secondly, the added lighted commercial sign to the front, well, it's going to shine into the residence windows in front of our building on Fifth Avenue. Importantly, I wanted to make the point that none of the major museums do so. The Guggenheim, the Cooper Hewitt, the Whitney or Frick, which is now the Frick building, even the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the signs are positioned across the street there, and they don't shine into any of the apartment windows. And I live on Fifth Avenue, so I can attest to that. But even these other museums that I've mentioned, all of their signage is either in their entrance foyer or inside their building. So I think, putting a commercial sign onto a very busy sidewalk, I think is a huge mistake. Additionally, the enclosed wall seating area that you're proposing extends into the busy public sidewalk, which I think will interfere with the flow of traffic on a highly congested street, particularly with your proposed structure of people sitting on the side of it. It's just going to create even more congestion. I also think that because it's enclosed, it's going to result in a space for the unhoused to infiltrate and remain unseen when located on the interior wall in the evenings once the building is closed and your activities have ended. And just to revert to your proposed project in the back, the extension of what you're proposing is almost 3 times the existing space and is really too big for a single family home, the extension will really butt up to the next building, which I don't necessarily think is very attractive. But I just wanted to make those points. I think it's very important to consider the points of view of people who have lived here for so many years. And I hope you'll take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have James Colgate.
Hi, can you hear me? I think I'm unmuted.
Yes.
Okay, hi. My name is James Colgate, and while I grew up in CB8 in what's now the expanded Carnegie Hill Historic District, tonight my testimony is as land use counsel for the co-op building at 1010 Fifth Avenue directly to the south. I'm a partner at the firm of Brian Cave Leighton Paisner LLP. I will not be providing comments on the street facade. I think other people have and probably will talk about those specifics. Instead, I will concentrate my comments on the rear enlargement. I know you were aware, but rear enlargements, even those not visible from the street, are under the jurisdiction of the LPC. And minor changes can be approved at staff level. However, major changes, such as where the addition is deeper than the predominant depth or taller than the predominant height of additions or L's on the block, that requires a C of A hearing. And so we are at this point of, where a C of A is being sought for the enlargement. And that's for your consideration now. In reviewing rear enlargements, the commission takes into account the context of the existing houses and strives, where possible, to maintain an order with respect to the negative space at the center of the block formed by the various existing row houses. This is affectionately known by urban planners as the donut hole in the center of the block. And you can see how beautiful this particular donut hole is on page 12 of 44 of the presentation. That's the view from the common room that was just presented to you. That view from the proposed common room is at the far western end of this donut hole. But that common room is proposed to be created only by the construction of expanding the existing house in its depth greatly, so that in taking advantage of that view, it fills up a portion of that. We think that in doing so would significantly alter the negative space to the detriment of all of the buildings on the block. The existing house is a remarkable survivor. It managed to not be torn down for assemblages to the north and the south. And as per its certificate of occupancy, it still is, and is, according to the buildings department, to my knowledge, a single family house. It's going to be proposed to be converted to a permitted use in the district. It's allowed to be there. A cultural institution is fine on Fifth Avenue. But the single family shape in the rear, cascading down from the 6th floor to the 1st, with characteristic terrace-like extensions, is part of what makes the interior of this block special. The proposed enlargement would, as was described, regularize the rear by enlarging at the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and kind of really part of the 6th, even though there's no 6th story enlargement. It's at that height, would betray these historical features and adversely impact the qualities of the negative space, which currently affords breathing room to the apartment houses to the north and the south, and breathing room to the townhouses that look east and west from their yards. We believe a better solution should have been to presented with an addition only at the cellar level and first levels to avoid damaging the historic context of this negative space in the donut hole of the block. We also believe that the projecting rear balcony would be an unprecedented intrusion into the rear of this block and would unnecessarily reduce privacy. Rather, setback terraces with 6-foot-high sidewalls should be encouraged instead of the projecting balconies. At the proposed 5th story terrace, the sidewalls are nearly 1.5 stories high, which are unnecessarily high, blocking views and light, and should be limited to 6 feet high. We would urge your disapproval of this particular version of this plan, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we now have Lo Vandervalk. And Lo, you are unmuted.
Yes, I don't know if you received, I emailed 4 pictures to Saida, but I don't know if she got them or if they can be shown. But my name is Lo Vandervalk. I represent Carnegie Hill Neighbors. We're interested in this application because it's an institutional house on Fifth Avenue, and we have those same kinds of structures in Carnegie Hill. And I think the application is very commendable, obviously. I mean, a lot of work went into this, but we do have certain reservations, and I won't go into all of them, but one of them is the amount of glass in the door and substituting the more classical Beaux-Art door that was there. Maybe a more compromised solution could be found that would hark back to the earlier era. That goes for the canopy as well. But I would like to focus mainly on the, thank you, Saida, on the extension of the sidewalk. We feel that the penetration into the sidewalk is too large. And after all, Fifth Avenue is the great boulevard of New York City, and it deserves wider sidewalks. We know that several buildings have encroached on that sidewalk. And I note in particular the examples of the 2 neighbors. The neighbor in the lower picture here, you can see a view of the greenery of the neighbor to the north, which is 1016, an apartment building. That greenery penetrates the sidewalk by about 10 feet, leaving 15 feet of sidewalk. Now, going to a little bit further, going to the south of the block, on the other side of the institution, is a greenery penetration of 15 feet, leaving only 10 feet on the sidewalk. And that sidewalk has to accommodate traffic and also tree beds. We would recommend limiting the penetration to 10 feet. And also, we are concerned about the circular, semicircular bench arrangement. We think it's better to have the bench completely open to the sidewalk facing, so that people seated will face the Metropolitan Museum. There is the danger, obviously, of homeless coming at night and creating even an unsafe situation for people walking on the sidewalk. But mainly from an aesthetic point of view, regardless of the homeless, we think the sidewalk space needs to be respected. I have to say also that the building to the far to the south, 1010, I think it's 1010 Fifth Avenue. That the greenery there coming out 15 feet is one of the exceptions on all of Fifth Avenue, one of the very few exceptions of major apartment buildings built in the 1920s that go out that far. And I hope to document this for my presentation at the Landmarks Commission. And then one final comment, you see here another institution at the bottom of this picture, of this page. That's the American Irish Historic Society. They are coming out 15 feet and leaving only 10 feet to the sidewalk. So that gives you an idea of a regretful penetration of the sidewalk. And it might be an example pointing to, well, this is a precedent, we can do the same. But no, this precedent was set long ago. And if they were to revise it today, they would probably pull it back. And that's sort of a civic contribution to New York City, pulling it back. So that's my comment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lo. Next, we have Roy Levitt.
Yes, my name is Roy Levitt. I live at 1010 Fifth Avenue for the past 20 years. And almost everything that I've thought about with this initial presentation has been covered by others. I just would like to add at this point that I think the lighted sign commercializes the residential side of Fifth Avenue. I don't think it's appropriate. I also agree with the fact that the circular seating area that's proposed extends too far, and with people sitting on the edge, as is demonstrated in the diagram which is presented, by 1014, also further compromises the pedestrian passage on the sidewalk. To prevent people from sitting on that, you'll need to put these iron protrusions, which others have, to prevent people sitting on the ledge. And I think that would also detract from the quality, the appearance of the building. And I think that's probably what I have to add. Everything else has been covered, and I agree with it all. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have Diana Golden.
Diana, confirm muting.
Yes, I'm Harrison Golden, and I'm speaking for myself and for Diana Golden. First, I want to thank the committee for its hard work and for its civic mindedness and for the care that it brings to projects like this, and express our admiration as a community for what it is you do. Second, the idea of turning this abandoned building into a productive building is one that I applaud, and I think everybody in the neighborhood will applaud, as long as it's done in an appropriate contextual way. Third, I want to emphasize a point that's already been made, which is that the benches presented will unquestionably be an attractive nuisance, and it will be a bedroom at night And that is not productive for anybody involved, and I think ought not to be encouraged. And the way it is now configured, it will encourage that use. Lastly, I want to speak to the proposal on the east side of the building, the part of the building that is not visible from Fifth Avenue. There are many, many apartments. I haven't undertaken to count them, but I suspect that there are scores and scores of them that depend on the current configuration for light and air. And any change that is designed to enhance the building that is the subject of this application, that severely disadvantages large numbers of families who place the courtyard, I think ought not prevail. And the infill that is suggested will substantially reduce the light and the air for large numbers of apartments. And it seems to me that it is the responsibility of the committee to be mindful of that. And for the sake of creating a new cultural facility, not to undermine the quality of life of large numbers of residents who surround this building. So again, I conclude by saying that we are grateful for the hard work of the committee. I should acknowledge that I speak with some self-interest in this matter, as I am a resident at 1016 Fifth Avenue. I can't claim the longevity of some of the other people who have spoken. I spent many years and most of my life in the Bronx, but I've been a happy resident of this neighborhood for some years now. And I hope that the committee will be mindful of the quality of life issue that I have tried to emphasize.
Thank you. And now we have Steve Rabin.
Good evening. First, thank you for the presentation and also for the boards setting this opportunity for folks to give you their thoughts. I'd like to emphasize three things. One, I think we've heard about the safety concerns about the bench, but also noise. And Fifth Avenue in the evenings becomes a gathering place for teenagers. And right now they're across the street on the steps of the Met, but I think a nice bench would welcome them to another area to be under folks' windows. So I think you've heard lots of reasons why the bench is probably a really bad idea for the neighborhood, and I'll add that one. My two other concerns that are really worrying me is what you're calling the Scholars Kitchen and Terrace as part of the addition on the rear facade is an event space. And I think to intrude an elevated event space into a residential neighborhood raises some serious questions. And I think that as an event space, the kitchen and the outdoor area can be used obviously for, all types of events, possible music, speakers. And I think having it under people's windows is really out of character with the residential nature of the building. So I would encourage the board to not allow an outdoor elevated space like that to be added to the neighborhood. And should the cultural center feel strongly about having that for the scholars to enjoy some fresh air, which I would understand, have them commit to limits on how that space can be used. Certainly no amplified sound, no loud music, no late night events, no rental of the space. It would be an attractive space for folks who might want to do a small wedding or some other type of celebratory event. And that's the last thing that would be helpful for the neighborhood. So again, I think creating an elevated event space is not in character with the neighborhood and the historic district. And finally, I think Mr. Colgate's point about the light, the donut hole, the proposed extension will eliminate a fair amount of eastern light to our residents at 1016. And I strongly encourage the setbacks to the east be pulled back more towards Fifth Avenue to allow the continued access to light. It's a rarity in the city. It's something that's really important to folks and certainly to myself. And the extension will eliminate it from our apartment and will be in darkness thanks to the German Cultural Center. So I hope they reconsider that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see Melody Myers would like to comment.
Yes. Am I unmuted? Yes.
You are.
Thanks. I mean, is it time for us to respond? I wanted to make.
I would go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for the comments that we've heard so far. There's a few things that would be, I think, helpful to see, and I don't know if we can still bring up the presentation, because I do think it's helpful to look at a couple of images.
Yes, you can still share your screen.
Great. So if we could go to the second slide. And this is just talking about the donut hole and sort of what we're looking at, because it is it's an odd shape today. I'm now looking at a blank screen. So the property that we're talking about, 1014, is identified in the red triangle. And what exists there today is a building that runs to kind of that darker gray, not there, to, yeah, I guess you're trying to point to it, but the part that's in gray and in the darker gray is the footprint of the building that exists today. So if you're looking at a building, that's what's there today. And then beyond that, there is a current garden area that actually has a fair number of structures in it. The proposal that we have maintains that rear yard in profile, but it clearly does what people are talking about. It increases the height of the building so that the building itself will be 6 stories, effectively 6 stories for its entirety. So it's not changing the profile of the donut that exists today. It's actually a somewhat oddly configured space from that standpoint. This also, I think, shows you the existing configuration of the building against vis-a-vis the neighbors on each side. So what in fact exists today is a building which runs for 6 stories for the majority, and then it starts setting down to lower heights. And we would certainly be adding at the rear of it. There is an existing condition today where the 2 buildings on either side have set back. And what we would be doing is sort of what we're required to do from a zoning standpoint to do an enlargement is to build from our side lot line to our side lot line. If you go maybe to the image that shows the section, that's the very simple zoning section. So this is just a very, I think, straightforward explanation of what we're proposing to do. So we have a building that exists today. It is surrounded on both sides by 14-story buildings. We all know that the zoning along Fifth Avenue actually suggests higher buildings and up to 210 feet in height, which is not what we're doing. We're proposing what really is a rather modest enlargement at the back that goes no higher than the building that exists today. It will block, or it won't block because of the setbacks on either side, but it is true that a couple of the neighbor units will end up with more of their windows covered by this enlargement. So I certainly understand that concern. But there's different ways of enlarging a building, and we do think this is the one that makes the most sense in this area, the one that's actually the most consistent with the existing building, and is the one that we think does make sense. The door, and I will defer to Harriet to talk about some of the design issues, but I did want to point out that the front condition and the existing door is by no means the original door. The entire front area has been changed from its original design, and so what exists there today is not it's not iron and it's not the original. And certainly appreciate that people have comments about what the design should look like, but I did want to point that out as well. And if it makes sense, then I would defer to Harriet to talk a little bit more about some of the other comments that we heard.
Okay, thank you, Melanie. I think we have one more member of the public who has not spoken, and that is Victoria Orlin. So if you could unmute her.
Thank you. I'm also a resident at 1016 Fifth Avenue. I am also an architect, so I have a little bit of experience in this area. And I just wanted to add to some of the other comments that have been made. In regards to the ethos of this type of building, which was originally constructed as a townhouse residential building, it feels a lot like the details that you guys are adding to this structure, both on the Fifth Avenue facade and on the east facade, are really essentially going against the overall ethos of what this structure was meant to originally be, which is what I have always been under the impression that living off Fifth Avenue is all about. So I'm not going to repeat. I think Anik did a great job going into the details of the elements, especially on the facade, and others have discussed the massing of this building on the east side and the massing of enclosing the interior courtyards with this double height glass wall. It essentially has an extremely commercial feel to it, especially to residents who are internally looking back onto the structure. So whether or not you're going to have entertainment space or whatever you're going to be using this for, people living within the courtyard, looking back onto this courtyard, are always going to feel as if this structure has a commercial ethos or aesthetic to it, which really goes against the whole concept of what a townhouse in New York City off Fifth Avenue is meant to be. So for those two main reasons, the effect you're having, not only on the Fifth Avenue facade, but also on the east side, the east facade, are just so much against what this is supposed to be. And I don't think that your proposal is in any way sensitive to that at all. So, sorry.
Thank you. Normally, we allow members of the public to speak once. So if it's really important, Steve, you can, and you're quick. Okay, he's going to be quick. We'll give him the hook if he is.
Just quickly, I wanted to respond to Ms. Meyer's comments about the extension of the facade and its impact on the donut, and that it is taking a bite out of it because the proposed extension is going to actually connect up the north wall of the cultural center with 1016 Fifth and creating an enclosed box now with no light. So even though you showed a diagram from above, if you think about the extension in 3D, it's actually taking a big section of available light and air away from what's existing.
Thank you. And now, with no other members of the public, I think we now have comments from the committee members, and I guess we should do them in alphabetical order. Just
Elizabeth,
hard to do here.
confirm unmuting.
Yes. I thank you very much for the very good presentation, and I'm also very grateful to the neighbors for their comments. I don't believe that we can address all of the comments from the neighbors or the effect on their buildings, noise and so on. But I hope that the applicant will take their comments into consideration and work with the neighbors to address problems such as that. I think I'm glad you're restoring it. I would accept that the donut on every block, I think, on the Upper East Side is very important. And that has to, consideration has to be given to reducing the effect on the donut, because I think the donut is important on all Upper East Side thing. I also think that incursions into the sidewalk are not appropriate. I think that I understand your reasoning for doing something to make the entrance more significant and so on, but I think a more restrained solution would be better there. And then I have real problems with the door, the canopy, and the blackened iron. I think distracting. I think it's inappropriate, and to me, it is bad enough that unless that is changed, I can't accept this proposal. Although I think it has many good elements, but all the blackened steel and that awful door is just too much. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Next,
Alita?
Michelle, I think.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Michelle. My apologies.
It's okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anthony. Let me say this. I want to thank, well, the presenters did an excellent job in presenting all the detail and representing their ideas in this proposal. It was easy to comprehend and follow, and the imagery was good, so I compliment them on the proposal. I heartily compliment the neighbors for their comments, all of which I heartily agree with. They were exactly my thoughts as I was looking at this, as it was presented. I think we are judging appropriateness here. And to my mind, there is nothing in this presentation that is appropriate to this location, neither in the front nor in the back. I won't go into all of the explanations because they were all stated. And the addition of a commercial sign and street furniture in the form of that bench is only a further affront. I have to say, I'm not going to be as kind, but this actually made me angry, because to my mind, there was no consideration given to the historic nature of either the building or the block or the entirety of Fifth Avenue or any historic reference that would make sense in this proposal. I recommend heartily that this be a full disapproval. I know that's how I will vote. I hope if you're going, I won't even say restore, but if you are redoing this building, I hope you can come up with something far more appropriate than this, both for the design, the bulk, and everything that you have proposed. So sorry about that, but those are my very strong feelings about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And I think now we have Alita.
Thanks, Anthony. And thank you to the Cultural Center team for a thorough presentation, as has been pointed out, and also to the neighbors for thorough comments. What kind of, did I miss this? What kind of cultural institution will it be?
Should I answer that one? It's a place for transatlantic dialogue and exchange.
Okay. That's right. I read that. I'm sorry to cut you off. I had just forgotten. And is it something that's sponsored by the German government who owns the building, or is it a separate organization?
So there's a not-for-profit organization called 1014 Space for Ideas who would occupy the building and run the kind of roster of events at the building.
But it's still a private residence. So if the German government chose to sell it with all of the additions and changes that it's proposing, that's how a buyer would be able to buy it, right?
I can see Melanie.
I see Melanie shaking her head.
I'll defer to Melanie.
Thank you. As we said, the building has been used as a cultural institution since the 1960s. And that would be, again, that's what the intention is to continue that particular use. From a building standpoint, there are a number of rooms that would be available and are being used now for conferences, for exhibitions, for small concerts. Just so people know, the largest space is an auditorium that could holds a maximum of 75 people. The average attendance at the events that are being held is around 30 people. So it's something that's happening today. It's something that they would like to improve upon, and they'd like the opportunity for scholars that are working and actually are contributing to the content of these exhibits to be able to actually be in the building. So it would actually provide the opportunity for a living component in connection with the cultural.
Right. I understand all of that and appreciate that. But if they wanted to sell it, because I think a member of your team referred to it as a private residence, it would be able to be sold as a private residence with all of the changes that you would like to make. So I don't know.
The lawyer for the building to the south made that reference. Yes. Okay. So that was James Colgate on behalf of 1010. It has been used again the way that it's been used, but it's true that it was built originally as a townhouse and has been used for cultural uses since 1960.
Well, could it be sold as a private residence if that was what was chosen?
From a zoning standpoint, residential is permitted. So it's not organized to allow for that to happen. It's not, and hasn't been for many years. But
I understand that, but I
just wanted you to be clear that yes, of course it can, but it can also be sold for as a community facility.
Right. I understand that. And thank you, Melanie. I have to agree vehemently with my colleagues that this is very inappropriate for the historic nature and the residential nature of the community, while the intrusion into the sidewalk is both a revocable consent issue potentially. Is it? Are you going to the Transportation Committee about that?
That would require a revocable consent.
Okay, so I generally oppose all of those because we have very limited public space. And even though this is a cultural institution, it intrudes on the limited public space on a thoroughfare that is beautiful, where the sidewalks aren't wide enough, where I don't know if the tree pit rules or tree bed rules still apply, that if you work on the sidewalk, you have to expand them. And what looks like that poor little tree in front of the window, that tree bed does not look like the right size. And that would be a further intrusion into the sidewalk, or it wouldn't, that's not an intrusion, but it would further narrow the space for pedestrians. I live near the church, Ignatius Loyola, that has two of those LED signs. They're much more prominent than what you're proposing, but they are very bright and very intrusive and do change, as someone pointed out, the nature of the block from residential to something that's more commercial. I think while I understand that you could have gone up instead of out, I'm concerned about the light box that that two-story space in the back would be emitting. And as far as the space in the front, the design looks inappropriate. The nature of it is inappropriate, even if it is historic to the building. It hasn't been like that in a long time. And the design does not seem to fit with the design of the surrounding buildings, all of which as a historic district need to be taken into account. I just don't think that, or as Elizabeth and Michelle pointed out, the canopy and the door contribute anything to the neighborhood. Rather, one of the reasons I object to those revocable consent intrusions is because it feels like they're setting up a moat, which is exactly what this looks like. It has nothing to do with what's going on in the interior. People were sitting there. It looked like they were waiting for a waiter. It had nothing to do with the cultural nature of the building or any of the events or anything that you have, lectures or anything else that you have planned. So, and plus the design is inappropriate. So I think I'll stop there, but it does not reference as much as I think you would like the history of the neighborhood and the aesthetics of the neighborhood. And for those reasons, I would have to object to this. But thank you again for the presentation. Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you, Alita. And I think Sarah is next alphabetically.
Thank you, Anthony. I would like to thank the presenters for a really thorough and thoughtful presentation. And I echo Michelle in that it was very easy to understand and conceptualize what's being proposed here. I have always felt that the rear elevation is as important as the front elevation. In terms of the texture that a building contributes to the neighborhood and that sort of residential appropriateness. And I am afraid that as striking as the upper floor windows are, that it creates much too large of a light box in the rear elevation and really does take away from the residential character of that neighborhood. I agree with my colleagues' comments about the front door and the front elevation. And so those are my comments about appropriateness. What I will add in terms of neighborhood character is that, the residents of this area really have a large street load from the public institutions that currently exist. And to add to that, in kind of the intensely residential aspect of the rear yard, I think is tough to accept. And the large massing that would of the building as it extends to the back and is also required for that. I think it's the third floor balcony, the third and that when you look at the images where you can see the distance of the buildings to the side, either side of 1014, that you really begin to see the impact of this building on its neighbors. And one of the wonderful things about historic districts is that that there's care taken into how neighborhoods may or may not evolve or change and what we preserve. And so I couldn't support this application in its current state because I believe that the residential character of the area is so important and really does need to be thought of as one of the things that needs to be preserved here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. I think Marco is next. Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony. First of all, I had to thank you a lot. The neighbors, they came right here and explained very well, make their points very clear. I think that most of them, they are very valid. And also I have to thank you, the applicant. The applicant is a very good professional. He did their best, and I think I had to applaud that. However, the streetscape, seeing that the seating, which is uncommon on Fifth Avenue, is nice, beautiful, but it's uncommon. And that complicates with the other kind of uses in the area. And changing this traditional front doors and windows, I think doesn't have no sense at all. On the contrary, they try to maintain and destroy the fabric of the Fifth Avenue. Encroaching the pedestrian, the sidewalk, I think is wrong. If you have in your, probably your airway, that would be fine, probably, but not, but still the problem is on the seating and the proposal of the entire first floor. The rest, I think you did very well. With respect to the last floor, the trellis, it is nice, it is beautiful, it's elegant. The problem is when you have activities in that part, you create noise. And the minimum noise in the middle of the two large buildings, it reverberate the noise. And small noise, it will become 10 or 20 times bigger, and that will affect the quality of life of the residents. And I think these kind of ideas, especially between two large buildings, I think is no smart idea. What else I have to say that I have? I think that's basically pretty much, and thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Marco. And I think now we have Kimberly Selway.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm not going to belabor the point, given that we're already an hour and 15 minutes into this meeting and we're only on one application, but I agree with the comments my colleagues have made, particularly around the signage in the front. And with that, I cannot support this application.
Thank you, Kimberly. And I think now we have Jane.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you again for stepping in. I'm going to vote against the application, but I do want to commend the neighbors for coming out, in particular Jay Golden, who was one of the most preeminent individuals in city politics for a long time. He was the best controller we've ever had. So it's unusual for a Monday night in the middle of the summer to get such a wonderful turnout from the neighborhood. The other thing I want to remind my colleagues on the committee is that even though it's a residential neighborhood, it's also known as Museum Mile. There are museums going all up and down Fifth Avenue that manage to integrate themselves into the fabric of Fifth Avenue extremely well. I am going to vote against the application, but I just wanted to remind all of us that while it's residential, there are these wonderful cultural institutions that contribute to the fabric of our life. And hopefully the applicant will come up with a solution to this very pretty building that we can all find acceptable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jane. And I just have a few comments and a question. Are you scheduled? Oh, there's Melanie. Are you scheduled for a landmarks hearing yet? And if so, when?
That for Melanie?
Yes. Yeah, we will confirm. We were scheduled for August 9th. From a timing standpoint, our project manager is out and will be back next week. And so if we're not on August 9th, which I think is the right date, it will be in September, and we can certainly make sure the community board is aware of the date.
Great. Okay, thank you. Just a couple of comments. One of the aspects of this committee, and in a way, this committee in particular, that struck me the most when I became a community board member was the importance of the actual neighbors' comments. And that it's something that I'm an architect, so I can look at this thing and decide whether I like it or not, or whether I think it's appropriate. But the comments that the neighbors make, while not necessarily completely germane to architectural appropriateness, do speak to the overall appropriateness of a project. And it is wonderful. I'll just echo what everyone else has said, that it's wonderful that you were all here. I think there are a number a number of serious problems, all of which have been commented upon. I think the illuminated sign, there are a number of things that just feel like deal breakers. The illuminated sign, the expansion into the public way with the bench that points the wrong way, the inward looking bench that creates a safe haven for bad actors. The architectural interventions on the facade, which is to say the oversized, you call it a gate, sort of a door, sort of a gate, and then the glass canopy. I think, I apologize for being unkind. The glass canopy feels today like a lazy solution. And I'll end my comments there. I think everyone has brought up all of the issues. Is there a resolution? Would someone like to make a resolution? Jane.
I'll move to disapprove as presented.
Is there a second? Michelle has seconded it. And so I think we can go to a vote. I guess start. Yeah, no, take your time, Saeed. I guess alphabetically A to T.
I'll go ahead and unmute everyone. So if you can confirm on your end.
Yes, it's a motion to disapprove. So I'll remind everybody that a yes is a no. After the vote is taken, I just want to make a comment. Anthony, if you can call on me, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
Sarah, if you could confirm on your end, unmuting. Thank you.
I vote yes. Okay. Oops, sorry.
It's okay. Elizabeth?
Yes.
Okay. Michelle?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes, Anthony, can I just add something that a neighbor mentioned that no one else has, I think, to include in the resolution if the disapproval passes, which is that if they're using the outdoor space in the rear for any kind of event space, it is a gross intrusion and disruption to the people who live there. Thank you.
Sarah?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Marco?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll give the tally in a moment.
I think Anthony, Michelle wanted to make one brief comment before we move along.
Yes, thank you very much. I wanted to say, Anthony, that I assume you're writing up this resolution, and I think it's really, there was a lot of content in the neighbors and the members of the board's comments, but I do think that it would be important that in all of the therefore be it in all of the whereas clauses, that each of these be very detailed in explanation, both because I think it's very important so that our view is adequately represented in the resolution, and also because this is coming to landmarks in the middle of the summer, probably. And so there may be minimal people attending that landmarks meeting that would ordinarily be there to testify. I'm sure the major preservation organizations will make it a point to have a representative there, but in terms of the public and others, it's a hard time of the year, and I want to be sure that our position is stated very strongly so that it's taken into serious consideration by the commission. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks very much. I appreciate that.
Just following up to let you know that it was unanimously approved with 8 in favor.
Thank you. Thank you again, Anthony. I think that the co-chairs tonight, it's Anthony and me, you do an excellent job of writing up the resolutions. whether it's winter, fall, spring, or summer. We are going to move along to the next application, which is 18 East 68th Street. It's a Beaux-Arts style building designed by Cass Gilbert. And the application is for installation of a cast iron gate at the front stoop. So is the applicant here?
Yes.
And
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Who, it's Alexander Jacobs?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You can go ahead and share your screen,
Yeah.
Alexander, or is it going to be Irina?
Oh, you can just put the presentation up, I guess, the that we have. I don't.
Is someone on your team going to put it up?
Yeah, could you allow Carlos Heredia on if he's?
Okay.
Can you admit him?
He's here.
Okay, Carlos, can you share the screen?
Yeah, hold on. Let's see. I have the file opening up.
Oh, I think it's on. There we go.
Okay, could go ahead.
Okay. You want to introduce it or should I just get going?
Just go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, okay. Good evening. I'm Alec Jacobs. I'm principal of the Stephen Jacobs Group. I'm joined tonight with Carlos Heredia from my office and Irene Benfield and Alfred Weiss, who represent ownership. This building is 1868, 18 East 68th Street. It's also known as the Sloan Mansion. It was designed by Cass Gilbert in 1904. It's part of the Upper East Side Historic District. The mansion's atypical of the block, and it's Beaux-Arts, but most of the buildings on the block, that side of the block, are typical townhouses. This one's a little bit taller, a little bit grandiose. Henry Sloan, the original owner, was an art collector, so he made it a fireproof building with high floors to display his artwork. Anyway, our application tonight is for a front stoop gate. Our owner has restored this building over the last 10 years, including replacement of the windows. We were before this board in February for a front gate stoop and two lions that would be on the front podium surrounding the stoop. This board approved it. The reason we're back here tonight is because Landmarks, while they liked the lions, they did not like the front gate that was going to be located on the stoop. We're coming back here tonight with a revised version of the front gate that would address Landmarks' concerns. You want to turn to the next page, Carlos? Just keep going. That's the stoop as it is. This is the revised gate that would be on the stoop. Our previous gate was a little bit higher, it was about 3'6", and kind of Landmark Preservation Commission felt that it kind of detracted from the openness of the building. The ironwork was very heavy because the ironwork was actually matching the ironwork of the areaway and the ironwork on the upper portions of the building. We've come back here with a lower gate that has, while it's not as heavily ornamental and a little much more open than the previous gate and the adjacent ironwork, it still has some reminiscent elements of the existing ironwork without being quite as heavy. Again, the owner wants the gate because of people sitting on the front stoops. As I've heard here tonight, a lot of people in the neighborhood don't seem to like that. The board, this subcommittee before has previously approved a gate that was a bit higher and a little more dense. This one's a little lower and more open, but it still serves the purpose that ownership wanted to do. That's kind of it.
Thank you very much. So it's this iteration that's actually, when I'm looking at my screen, it's on the right. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're both, yeah, the whole, both
Oh,
iterations.
right.
are the
Okay, I
same.
see. The door is.
We didn't present the other one, but it was about as high as the surrounding areaway ironwork before. So we've lowered
Thank
it quite
you.
a bit.
I just was confused. Thank you very much. Is there
Sure.
anyone from the public?
We don't have any raised hands from members of the public.
Okay. Not like the last application. Okay, we'll go to the members of the community board and we'll go in the reverse this time. So I guess that means we can start with Marco.
Okay.
Thank you, Jane. I think the new proposal, definitely the height make a huge difference. You actually try to do not disturb the view of the main door. And that makes a lot of sense. And I think the height is I think is better than that we approve. And also the density of the fence, it has been reduced. I think the main attraction is still the main door, and I think it's a very good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco.
I'm unmuting.
This is Sarah. I have no additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for coming back to the board. Sometimes people bypass the committee, and I, for one, really appreciate that you came back with a design that really respects the quality of the door and the openness. So, so thank you, and I like it.
Thank you, Alita.
Thank you very much. This is Michelle. I will approve this, heartily approve it. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you, Michelle.
Elizabeth?
Yes, I can approve this too.
Wonderful. Thank you, Elizabeth. And then I guess Kimberly, right? Kimberly?
Correct. Kimberly, confirm unmuting.
And I can approve this as well. Thank you, Jane.
You're welcome, Kimberly. And Anthony.
I'll vote for approval, but I have a general problem with gates across stairs, especially in this kind of situation. But it's better than it was, and I really do appreciate that you came back to us. So I'll approve this.
I see Michelle has her hand up, but before I call on her, I just want to say I will, of course, approve as well. I'm not sure why we're thanking the applicant for coming back when it's really the Landmarks Commission that sent the application up to us for a hearing on it. I just wanted to clarify that point. The applicant seems great, of course, and the architect seems great, but they're here, you know, for, as we know, they have to be. Okay, Michelle, you have a comment? Your hand is up.
Yes, I wanted to propose a resolution to approve as presented.
And is there a second on that? Thank you, Anthony and Kimberly. So I think we can go to a vote.
Okay, 1 second while I unmute everyone, if you can just bear with me. Elizabeth?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Marco?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Thank you. Unanimous approval?
Alita, did you want to make a comment?
I just wanted to say, Jane, thank you for clarifying about whether the applicant had to come back. Sometimes if something's not approved or asked by landmarks to be changed, they don't come back. So I'm really confused, but about when they do and when they don't. I know that they bypass. I just wanted to thank you. Sometimes they bypass. I wanted to thank you for clarifying about that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Alita. It's true. Sometimes they do ask the applicant to make changes and they do not come back to us, the applicant, as part of a public hearing process. I think in this case, because it's so highly visible and right in front of the building, the doors are so beautiful, and it's a Cass Gilbert designed property, which, you know, he's one of the most preeminent architects in all of New York City, starting at the beginning of the 20th century. So I appreciate that, Alita. We're going to move right along to the Society Library, 53 79th Street. It's so amazing to have such an interesting agenda tonight. This is an Italian Renaissance style townhouse designed again by famous architects Trowbridge and Livingston. Retrofitted in 1937 for its current library use. Application is for replacement of 2 front windows at the cellar level and a horizontal extension on the rear cellar and first floor levels to be used for additional book storage. Who is presenting? Doug Larson, are you presenting for the applicant?
Yes. Thank you, Jane. It's Doug Larson.
Doug Larson, who I know, a lot of familiar faces tonight.
Hi, Jane. Good evening, everyone. I'm an architect. I'm here representing the New York Society Library. And unfortunately, the executive director, which is called the head librarian, could not be with us tonight. So I'd like to begin with a recorded message from her introducing the project. So let's see if I can get this to work. Video. Okay, I have to. Okay, can you all see Carolyn?
We can.
We can.
Hello to the committee and to everyone on the call. I'm Carolyn Waters, head librarian at the New York Society Library. My sincere apologies that I cannot be with you live. The New York Society Library is the city's oldest library and cultural institution, founded in 1754 in a room in the old City Hall. For the past 268 years, we've moved 5 times. In 1937, we renovated and moved into the historic John S. and Catherine T. Rogers House at 53 East 79th Street. And while we serve readers and writers and families from all over the city and beyond, we are at our core a neighborhood library. Our 300,000 volume book collection is stored in this one site and is available to both members and non-members. We host hundreds of events every year, most of which are open to the public, and our exhibitions are always free and open to the public. Membership is open to all, with benefits that include access to open book stacks, circulating privileges, and the use of our lovely reading and writing spaces. This beautiful classical building has served us very well these past 85 years. In fact, we've been here longer than in any of our prior homes. But we are running out of space for books and for people, library members, staff, and the public. And we're seeking support from the Community Board 8 Landmarks Committee and our neighbors here on the Upper East Side for a renovation that will provide additional space for both. We are looking to expand into our rear yard for an extension only on the cellar and first floor levels for additional book storage, which will then give us room to reconfigure interior spaces. Doug Larson of Larson Architecture Works is our consulting architect and will give you more information about our proposed renovation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. So now I'm going to move to the presentation. Let's see. I have to pull up. Okay, let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to switch from video mode to basic mode. Sorry about that. Okay, can everyone see this?
We can see it, yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
I'm going to go to full screen mode. Okay, I should also mention that Jean Pfeiffer is also with us. She is co-chair of the building committee. She's also standing by in case there are any questions for someone who represents the institution in Carolyn's absence. So the New York Society Library, I'm sure you may all be familiar with it, is on East 79th Street, just east of Madison Avenue. It's a 1917 townhouse designed by Trowbridge and Livingston for John S. and Catherine C. Rogers. In 1936, the library acquired the house and renovated it under the direction of George W. Thompson. And I can show you a little bit more in a minute what he did to the building. So here on the left, you see it from a 1940s tax photo, just after it was acquired, and in 1967 from the landmark designation report. So here's the block context of the building. On the left, you see a Sanborn map, and the building is here indicated in orange. And on the right, you can see the landmarks map. Now, the library is not in a landmark district, but it's at the nexus of three: the Upper East Side Historic District, the Metropolitan Museum District, and the Park Avenue District. However, it is an individual landmark, one of four in a row of townhouses, the most distinguished being designed by Trowbridge and Livingston and Carrera and Hastings. The aerial photo here sort of gives you an orientation, excuse me, from the air. So you can see the library right here with the co-op building on the corner and the four landmark townhouses right here. So I know that landmarks committee and landmarks in general really looks at the mid-block, the donut we've been talking about. So I want to show a map here of the entire block with the rear yard, existing rear yard intrusions. You can see most of the buildings on the eastern end have smaller intrusions, but at this end of the block, the lots are built almost entirely full. So this is the site for the New York Society Library here. These are the four townhouses. This is the co-op on the southwest corner of the block. This is a brand new building which was just put up. It's 1045 actually, Madison, not 145, called the Benson, designed by Peter Penoyer. This building right here, number 48 East 80th Street, is the Manhattan Church of Christ, which goes full block. These next two buildings are apartment buildings, multifamily buildings. This building already has a 4-story rear yard extension almost right up to the corner. And these other two, which border the library to the north, have 2-story rear yard extensions. So now I'm going to take you into some rear yard photos so you can actually see what it looks like back there. So this is actually what it looks like behind the library. So the space is a little over 12 feet wide by 42 feet long with the full width of the block. The library has a retaining wall. This image here on the left is looking east, and this image on the right is looking west. The library has a retaining wall here. Lot 48 is the Manhattan Church of Christ, which is built full up to 2 stories above this garden. This is one of the 2 multifamily apartment buildings, which has a rear yard garden. This is the other one, which is also built 2 stories above their rear yard. So on the right, what you can see in the distance here is the scaffolding from the erection of the Benson. This photograph was taken a little while ago when they were building the building. So that scaffolding is really the required protection. That scaffolding is now gone. And what's back here at this level is the rear yard of the co-op building. Now, if you were to go to the roof of the library and look down, this is the rear yard right here, sort of hazed in white. You can see the rear yard extension on the Manhattan Church of Christ. That's 2 stories tall. You can see the tree in the garden of the one multifamily building, and you can barely make out the brick extension of the other multifamily building on 80th Street. To the east of the library, there's a very small rear yard of the townhouse to their east. And to the west, you can see the scaffolding and the wall under construction of the rear of the Benson. The Benson built full to their lot line, and this is a windowless wall. Okay, the next slide here is a section through the library looking east. The image on the left is existing conditions. The image on the right is a proposed rear yard addition shaded in blue. So you can see in 1937, George Thompson basically gutted the back third of the building and inserted 12 floors of stacks, the old-fashioned self-supporting kind that you find at old university libraries. The front 2/3 of the building are really the original grand rooms. You can see the scale of the rooms here and the wonderful staircase. If you're familiar with the library, the wonderful Italian piazza-style staircase. And you can see the rear yard here goes down to cellar level, really. And you can also see the curb on 79th Street. It's about 10 foot lower than the rear yards of the 80th Street townhouses. Here is the retaining wall that I showed you pictures of. And here is the 2-story extension of the multifamily building to the northeast. So the library would like to fill in the rear yard. It's a permitted bulk as of right in the zoning code to 23 feet above curb, a single story and a cellar. The cellar does not count as a story. And as Carolyn said, this would give them much needed additional book storage. Currently, this level here, which has 2 little basement windows to the street, is closed stack, high density storage. So the idea would be that the high density storage would be relocated from here to here. And here is sort of a rendering of what would be in the rear yard extension. The cellar would house large folio storage. And the upper single story, 23 feet high, would be a very tall, high density book storage system. The library has about 30,000 volumes in its collection, and this rear yard extension would allow them to increase their capacity about 10%. It would hold about 28,000 books. So now I'll take you into photographs from the 3 different sides, from the west, from the north, and from the east, of what the neighbors would see. So this is sort of before and after. On the left is a before shot looking from the rear yard of the co-op. So the co-op is built full at the cellar level, that you can see the red brick paving stones here. So there's actually cellar space under here. And this, beyond this metal fence, is the rear yard of the library, which goes down another story. You can see Manhattan Church of Christ is right here. And you can see the one tree in the rear yard of the multifamily building that has a garden. So a 23-foot permitted rear yard obstruction would take up this volume right here. This is what the co-op would have in its rear yard. This image is taken from the rear of the building to the north. It's number 50 East 80th Street. You can see the tree. You can see all of the old windows that George Thompson filled up in 1937. The lintels and the sills are still there. There is a fence here along the retaining wall, and if you were to walk up to that fence, you would look down almost a floor and a half into that rear yard. So permitted obstruction in the rear yard would appear this way to the neighbor to the north. And this is a view from the neighbor's rear yard to the east. So that is number 59 East 79th Street. They have a slightly smaller rear yard than the library does. And it's terraced in a strange way. You really have to climb over everything to get to this spot. So nobody ever goes here. On the left, you can see the view through to the Benson under construction. And on the right, you can see shaded in white, the bulk of a 23-foot rear yard obstruction. So we've also submitted a drawing. I think that was one of the requests that was made. I think the photographs give you a better idea of what's going on in the rear yard. But this is, if we were to cut a section through the garden of number 50 East 80th Street, this is what you would see. The dotted line here is the envelope of Manhattan Church of Christ's 2-story rear yard extension. The dotted lines here are the rear yard extensions of number 52 East 80th Street The garden level is here. You can see the garden fence. So this is the wall that would be visible from the neighbor to the north. Here are some plans showing how the space would be arranged. This is the cellar level for folio storage. It's about 422 square feet. This is the first floor level with the high density storage. So altogether, it's almost 900 square feet of additional space. You can also see the stack system that George Thompson put in 1937. We are also proposing to restore 2 windows at the sidewalk level. Here, these give into, right now they're closed up. They're at the level of the high density storage system that would be relocated to the rear. So the idea is to restore those 2 windows, open them to daylight, and allow them to be not a south-facing light for the occupants of the offices. The offices would go right below the main circulating desk. Right now, they're up on the 4th floor. This is a much better location right near the service entrance. And it gives them, even though the windows are at street level, they face south and they'll get very nice light down there. So this is in our application as well, is to restore these 2 windows. Here you see them from 1917. This is what they look like today. We would keep the grill work. All we would do is reproduce them and make them operable. So I'd just like to end with one more thing to note, and that is the library came before this committee in 2002 for exactly this application. And it was approved, and it went to Landmark's public hearing. It was also approved there. The library at the time, it was just before, if you remember, there was a financial moment, should we say, which made a large capital project unfeasible at the time. The library would now like to reconsider this project so that they can plan for their future. So that approval was in 2002 from your board and 2004 from the Landmarks Preservation Commission. So that's the end of what I'd like to say. Jean, would you like to say anything? If she doesn't raise her hand, I'll take that as a no.
There, am I unmuted?
There you are.
You are.
I just want to thank you all for your consideration and just repeat how much we love being an institution on the Upper East Side, and that we're hoping to build into that rear yard because we really need the space for book storage, and we're not asking for any particular variance or special treatment. I think it's as of right. And it would really help the library then make space for other uses in the more historic part of the building. So thank you.
And I didn't emphasize it during the presentation, but I think you can see from the photographs that it's a fairly bleak rear yard. And I personally don't think it will be a detriment to the hole in the donut. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Is there anyone from the public here?
We don't have any raised hands from the public.
Oh, thank you, Saida. With that, we can go to the board members. We can start this time with Elizabeth.
I'm not happy with this. It seems to block what it shouldn't, but I'll listen to my colleagues' opinions. I'm not crazy about this, and I think it's, it's visible from a public way and blocks a view. Thank you.
Well.
Yeah, thank you. How much of the rear yard is left after this is extended? And this is extended 10 feet. Did I read that? It's 10 out and about 20 something across. Is that correct?
It's 42 feet across, which is the width of the lot line to lot line.
Right.
And the zoning resolution allows us to build only to 100 feet from a wide street. And the lot is 102 feet. So there will be 2 feet left over. And I would just like to correct the comment that was made earlier that it's not visible from the public way at all. There's no, all of those photographs I showed you were from the neighboring rear yards.
So you said there's 2 feet left over, so, but it is going out 10 feet, an additional 10 feet. Is that a correct measurement? Do I remember that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So it never had a 30-foot rear yard
That's correct. It was overbuilt when it was built as a
when
residence.
it first started.
Right.
And the 2 feet that is left is faced with a blank wall from another building, a retaining wall of some kind?
That's correct.
Okay. And who sees this blank wall that you are proposing? Who in the back sees it?
The only people who would see it are the occupants of the upper level apartments at 52 East 80th Street. The Benson presents a blank wall. The co-op on the corner cannot see it. It's their service rear yard. Number 59 East 79th Street has that very tiny yard I showed you with the air conditioning condensers. Nobody goes there.
Okay, so this is really not seen by its neighbors either, with the exception of a top floor of another building who's seeing it from quite a distance.
That's correct.
All right, so it's starting from the cellar and it's including the first floor, correct?
That's correct.
Now, if we come around to the front of the building and those windows, can you put that screen up?
Sure.
I'm not understanding. You've got 2 of these windows. When you look at them in the picture on the left, it appears as though there's subground, unless I'm misreading that. But when you look at them on the picture on the right, they appear as though they are just sitting on the sidewalk. Is that correct?
They're exactly the way they are today that they were in 1917.
Okay, so what are you proposing to do with them? You want to enlarge them?
No, right now they're painted black and they do not operate. So if you were to go down.
Oh, you mean there's no window in there?
There is a window.
Oh.
But there's a black piece of plywood over them on the inside.
Oh,
so the
okay.
original window is there.
Okay.
If we can restore them and make them operable, we will, but we would rather reproduce them with insulated glass and make them operable so that they are exactly the way they were designed.
In this cutout. So if you reproduce them and you make them operable, will they reflect the 1/1s that's above them?
Well, the original ones were single light sashes. So I think we would just do the same thing.
The original ones of the basement window with single lights.
That's what we're talking about, is the 2 basement windows.
Yeah,
I'm sorry if I wasn't.
But you're saying they were originally single lights.
Yes.
And how do they open?
They're hoppers. They would open in with the hinges at the bottom.
And so you're maintaining the dimension, the size of the cutout, and you're replacing it pretty much in kind, but with insulated glass, etc. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Michelle. Is Elizabeth next? Oh, no.
Alita.
Alita, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know, and it's getting late, and it seems, I mean, for the whole meeting, but I appreciate your presentation. I have the same problem with book storage, but can't build out, so I can relate to this. I'm interested in what my other colleagues have to say. It's a very different, as you pointed out, donut configuration than the first presentation. It looks different. It feels different. The rest, the bigger, more expansive donut is further to the east. So this feels very different, but again, I'm interested in their comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Alita.
Hi. So I think that based on the presentation, that the appearance of the extension would be pretty utilitarian. But I do want to commend the New York Society Library for taking photographs of the viewpoints of the neighboring yards. I don't think we've had an applicant do that before. And so you might have set the standard, and I thought that that was a really thoughtful and sensitive thing to do, and I really appreciated it. And so it has the appearances from the other yards that that the new addition wouldn't be impacting the view in a significant way for the other neighbors. And so that was what really struck me about this presentation. And I just wanted to thank the applicants for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Jane. Well, I think the application is perfectly fine. I don't have no problem. The only concern that I have, are you sure that the extension has to be 100 feet? Because my concern is with the little piece that you leave in the back. You know what it is. It's gonna be full of garbage, it's gonna be full of animals, everything like that. And to do completely makes more sense rather to leave 2 feet. I appreciate also that you do as right of development. That's a very important part. And yeah, at that part in that section, the rear yard, the donut, the other building has been encroached. So hard to complain in that direction. And I think you did a very good job. And I don't have a problem. The only problem that I have is that you left 2 feet extra reminding in the rear. You should complete everything, because if your point of view is you need a space, these 2 feet makes a lot of sense for you, and not to leave like a collection of garbage in the back. And I think we have to think in the sanitary conditions that will have that space. 2 feet is wrong. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Marco.
Well, thank you for that. Shall I respond to that? Is that
I don't
okay?
think you need to, but if you want to, go ahead, but you don't need to.
Well, we actually applied to go all the way to the lot line, but the zoning regulation is very clear. You only get 100 feet from a wide street, and unfortunately our lot is 102. Now, we briefly talked to Landmarks. We talked to the deputy commissioner about a 74-711, which, the Landmarks could override the zoning and let us go there. But the library has been through that before, and it was such a lengthy process, an expensive process, they decided just to pull it back 2 feet. So we would flash this condition right here, and it really only occurs halfway across the rear, and then we would flash across to the retaining wall that goes to the garden. So we would, it wouldn't go down to the lower level, it would stop here, and it would be, they would be able to get to it from above and clean it with water, and the neighbor to the north would be able to do that. So it is something we would have liked to have done. So I totally agree with you. It's just that the zoning wouldn't allow it.
Thank you very much.
Kimberly?
I have no further questions on this application. I think I could support it, but I'll wait, of course, to hear what Anthony and Jane have to say.
Thank you.
Anthony?
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Jane. This is fine. This is what I think we would consider a no-brainer. It's absolutely fine. It's a good cause. It's completely, they're not asking for anything really that is objectionable to anybody. That's my comment.
Thank you. And I will support the application as well. It's an interesting contrast to the Cultural Center on Fifth Avenue. Thank you. Who wants to present a resolution? Michelle, your hand is up.
Michelle's hands up.
Michelle?
I
Move to approved as presented.
A second? I think Marcos did.
Marco.
Saida, we have plenty of seconders. So Saida, I think we can call the roll.
Okay. Just give me one moment to unmute everyone. Okay, Elizabeth,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Alita,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Anthony,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
Marco,
Yes.
Kimberly.
Yes.
Okay, we have a unanimous approval, 8 in favor.
Thank you all.
Saida. Now we're going to go to the Guggenheim Museum, and Anthony is going to handle that application.
Okay, this is 1071 Fifth Avenue, Guggenheim Museum. And this is an application to modify designated interior spaces, specifically the current gift shop. And who is here to? Adam Nelson has his hand raised. Oh, I think you need to be unmuted. There we go.
All right. Thank you very much. Very excited to be here this evening. This has been a very long process and such an amazing building to be working in. My name's Adam Nelson, as you stated. I work for a company called Event Network. Oh, let me start my presentation here so you can see this as well. Screen 3.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name of the company. I'm sorry.
Event Network. We are the operator, the current operator within the gift shop. So our company, gift shop space, and let's see, Zoom quit unexpectedly. What are we?
Oops. Oh, and it become muted again.
Okay.
Mute. So sorry about that. For some reason, when I tried, hopefully my presentation will work. I will pull that back up. We work for the, we operate the gift shop and have been able to work in conjunction with the museum itself. On the call, we also have Richard Avery and Trevor Tyrell. They work with the facilities team there at the museum and can answer any of the questions that I probably won't be able to answer. Let's give this screen share a second try. I'm gonna do this as an application instead. Okay, looks better. Can everybody see my screen?
We can see
Fantastic. It, yeah. All right. So we've been working with the museum for the last few years and have identified some major shortcomings in the current retail design of the space. Obviously, things have changed a lot over time, and it is time to make some upgrades and then try to kind of imagine what the future looks like as well. For the beginning of this process, and I'm going to apologize. I'm not going to go too deep into the building itself. I'm going to make an assumption here that most of the team knows this building, and we are going to kind of limit ourselves to this gift shop space. If you have more specific questions about the Guggenheim Museum, feel free to ask them, but I'm going to kind of stay within the gift shop space and how the current interior got to the phase that it's in. Originally, the location, as you can see here, which is marked in red, which is the current retail space, was a drive-through in its original building by Frank Lloyd Wright. In 1963, there were some additional changes made within the building that added a store to the main gallery, moved a cafe out and a library archive into the back corner of the building. In 1968, the space over the driveway was infilled for some additional offices and storage space. but in this case, the driveway stayed intact through this process. In 1975, they took advantage of the overhang of the driveway and infilled it to gain them some more space, some back of house area to move some of the items into their loading dock and things like that. This is where we see sort of the first iteration of the bookstore gift shop move into this space, which I believe prompted the landmarking of this area come 1991 during the Gwathmey-Seagull construction of the North Tower. This is the large building that sits adjacent to and sort of behind the museum. And as part of this process, Gwathmey-Seagull had aspects and areas of the building that they had worked on landmarked, and I'll show you in the next slide what that boundary looks like. But you can see here that when that was completed, we now see kind of the store configuration and opening as it is now. What's really interesting about this is that through the landmark process, not the entire space was landmarked, only the space that Gwathmey-Seagull had worked within, and when they created their new retail space. So on the left-hand side here, we can see the existing conditions. The blue dashed line represents the landmarked area within the store. We show here the casework that we would like to remove from the space, as well as some of the original Frank Lloyd Wright designed and built features within the area. And from there, you can kind of get a sense of what we're working with. And I have some additional photos as well. In conjunction and kind of in contrast to what you can see here on the right, we have a floor plan that shows the proposed casework that we'd like to bring in, and some of the casework that we'd like to remain, and a few other minor changes within this area, since the space behind the existing casework never has been finished. As far as we understand, it is just block. We would like to conceal the block with a gypsum wall and create a more finished condition that's more consistent with other areas within the museum space and store. All right, so I'm actually going to bounce up and down a little bit. I think there may have been a better logical orientation to this. So I'll show you first the existing so you know what we're working with in the rendering. This is the corner of the store where the point of sale exists. This gives you a reference point. I'll bounce back up to the rendering here. On the floor plan, you can see theoretically where you'd be standing in this camera view looking over. We have removed the point of sale from this corner. It's a very large, bulky fixture that takes up a lot of floor space. It's non-ADA compliant and was built and designed in a way that definitely took styles from the original or the Frank Lloyd Wright era furniture that's found throughout the building, but was also built and endowed with features of the time, which was very large cash drawers, a sense of privacy to the employees, very high walls, things like that. So we've removed that from this space and brought in some additional paneling and custom casework that will help fill the needs of art sales. That's something that the current fixturing does not allow very well. And so we've provided 2 purpose-built fixtures within this space. For the most part, we've stayed away from purpose-built fixtures for flexibility. We try to imagine what the future brings, but at the same time, we also know we don't know. So we're trying to future-proof a little bit, but we believe cards and posters and things like that will be necessary for a very long time. On the left-hand side, we have a recess standard system. That's a merchandising system where the hardware clips into the rails, the walls, and then simple shelves and boxes A electrified system will allow the shelves also to be lit on the underside or inside the boxes, taking some of the pressure off of the existing lighting system. The detailing of the fixtures and casework is very much based on many other Frank Lloyd Wright pieces throughout the building. There's definitely a kind of a narrow, walkway here where this is, it is landmarked as a Guathme Siegel space, but also knowing that their casework was inspired by Frank Lloyd Wright. We're trying to kind of find that balance of going back to the original instead of making a copy of a copy. And so we think that we've been able to do that with much of the detailing here, and the casework shows up in lower slides. Here's another view back into this corner again. Some of the additional wall and casework that it's going to remain and that we will kind of extend and build from this firewall and other egress path on that end. Looking the other direction, if I can get to slide down. So now we've stepped into that corner where the poster fixture really is and turned around and looked the other way. Just really opening up the room more. The point of sale has moved to this side of the space, and you can see just a much cleaner view. The large, big change here, and I'm just going to call it out, the elephant in the room, is going to be this wall. I'll show a view of this here in a second. This is currently a merchandised nook within the store. It's a area that's very uncomfortable for multiple people to stand within. It's also kind of a loss prevention issue because it is sort of a hidden corner back here. So we are proposing taking this space, giving us an additional little bit of storage on this level in this store, and then concealing it behind this wall, bringing the wall up to 8 feet, and moving our point of sale over here. That opens up the center of the store to really bring in this. We sometimes refer to our product lines as stories, but it allows us to tell better stories about the different exhibits, really bring a more rich atmosphere that's based around the artists and the missions and objectives of the museum into the heart of the store, which is really where what that use of that space should be, and pushes the point of sale off to the side a little bit over there. Looking in to that corner, you can see here how tight it is. There is a glass window in this space. You can see how it is viewed from the outside. The intention here is that we would bring in a vinyl film that would, as closely as possible, match the sort of previously filmed windows here. So this would appear as a consistent condition outside from the view. Really, a average walker by would not know or understand anything had changed here. On the inside, that semi-transparent film would still let in natural light over the top of our partition wall. It's not a permanent wall. It is a standalone piece of furniture that could be easily removed in the future without damage or any circumstances to the walls in that space. The other thing I'll point out is the point of sale as well is a movable piece of furniture. It will connect to power and data on the sidewall, but it is not a permanent fixture. If at some point that is no longer needed, or a change needs to be made, it'd be easy to come back to this team and request a change to that area without major modifications to the room or building. Looking in, the other thing that we wanted to consider was really many of the viewpoints from customers and guests and patrons alike. As you can see here from this entrance, this is looking from within the store over to the entrance of the museum, sort of historic vestibule, some of the original Frank Lloyd Wright cast spaces. This column here is this column here on this side. And you can see from this point that back hallway is not visible when standing within the foyer. So placing that wall there would not have a large impact on the visibility looking into space. For the most part, the visibility looking into space isn't impacted for our by our casework as well. And then I will just kind of quickly jump through some of these fixtures, but as I said, this is a standalone item. The detailing is really based on other elements within the building. The coat check counter, we can see the styling of the edges here replicate the curves into this counter. These, we call this an apron, on the back is removable. If in the future, the point of sale is not computer based or something like that, we can move to a clean countertop condition. But in the interim time, we want to make sure that kind of the ugliness of computer monitors and things like that, which we can't avoid, is somewhat concealed. It's better than potentially just a monitor sitting on top of the counter. It gives a much more finished look than just the equipment sitting out. Our floor fixtures, you can see an example of it here. Again, the bench within the larger atrium space of the museum, some shelving, things like that we found. Those curves, shelves in different areas within these fixtures, like these ribs that extend through the fixture and edges, are all replicated within these pieces to create a cohesive sort of environment that really links to the larger experience of the museum. And then back here, the card fixture and poster fixture, again, same thing, all the details, coloring. It's important to point out that we will be looking to match the existing oak grain as close as we can, as well as the finish. So the coloration of the wood would be the same. We will not be going after a more trendy rift cut white oak, light stain. We would be looking to replicate the existing conditions back into this store and keep things consistent with the building. And then the last piece would be the standalone door and wall partition. It is designed to be consistent with the egress door and some of the casework that was designed and landmarked by Guggenheim Museum that's near the entrance of the store. And so we pick up the same sort of flat door trim, flat, simple panel design, and a little space cut out in the back wall that would allow the team to wrap gifts and things like that for customers so that items that are glass or fragile don't get broken. The curvature of the point of sale makes it very hard for us to include that in the under counter like we might at another location. So we've sort of integrated it here into the back wall. This could be used in the future in a variety of different ways, but it would have a place for a piece of art or something like that as well. And then that is it. So in summary, some of the things that I did not touch on is that we really are looking at just making changes to the perimeter of the room. The original Guggenheim Museum era ceiling and terrazzo floor, both of which are based on other spaces within the museum, we will not be touching, and they will stay in their original condition. The furnishings are really, I would say, mostly inspired Frank Lloyd Wright, but where there's sort of a detail we pick up, like that door, we have leaned on Guggenheim Museum spaces for additional inspiration, be matching the oak. All of the floor fixtures, including these merchandising tables, are not permanent. They will be able to be moved so that the museum and the retail space can bring in different stories, as I said, and merchandise this in different ways as needs change over time. And then all of the built-in fixturing will be standardized with standard merchandising hardware so that generations to come won't need specialized systems. If something breaks, it doesn't leave it unusable for the remainder of history until this is changed again at some hopefully very distant point in the future. So standardizing it and moving away from other types of systems. So that's in a nutshell.
Thank you. Do we have, I see we have Lo as a member of the public, Lo Vandervalk.
Before Lo speaks, Anthony, I have one question. SRGM, those initials, what do they stand for?
Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum.
Oh, Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum. Thank you so much.
Sorry.
Thank you.
We want to be more specific than just original Frank Lloyd Wright furnishings, more specific to this building. So.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, Lo.
Oh, yes. My name is Lo Vandervalk. I'm representing Carnegie Hill Neighbors. Thank you for this presentation. It was very edifying. I must say I enjoyed the history. I didn't realize that there was a driveway that went all the way through the building, coming in on 89th and exiting on 5th Avenue. Found that interesting. But to the application, I think we would be, we would applaud this. Obviously, it's hard to evaluate a change, but what you're proposing looks very, very clean and very streamlined and in the spirit of Frank Lloyd Wright. I do have one question, and that is, when you walk along 5th Avenue in the evening after the museum is closed and all the vendors have left, and you really do enjoy a beautiful view of the building, it was always remarkable that the store was well lit and you could look in, and it was just a very beautiful, image to look at. I wonder, have you considered what the view would be from the street of the store after these alterations? And that's my question. Thank you. Thank you.
Is it all right if I respond?
Yes.
Please.
Yes.
Yes, very much so. The current, if you can see my little hand cursor here, the current lights that are installed here are fluorescents. And though the output is decent, it's inefficient, and the quality of light is lower than we'd like. The new shelves will actually increase the flexibility and the possibility of lighting products. Side lighting bays can become problematic depending on the product because the light doesn't necessarily make it all the way in to the center of the space, but we will be retaining all of the existing lighting systems overhead. So that well lit piece, and then the lights that are utilized underneath the shelves to light the product that is on the shelf below that will leave the store beautifully merchandised and lit when appropriate, times for the lights to be on exist. So to be 100% honest, I think that to the common passerby, the back wall that exists now in its configuration with that sort of large oak wall with product will still exist as a large oak wall with product that's well lit. I don't know if the average person will even know that a change is made.
Thank you. Probably not, actually. Are there any other members of the public? I don't see any, but I could be wrong.
You're correct. No.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. So let's go to the committee, and I think we go backwards now. So we start with, or reverse alphabetical order. And so we start with Marco.
Thank you, Anthony. And thank you for your presentation. This is not another landmark building. This is the father of the modern architecture that we're talking about right here. And I found it very insensitive change. And thank you for presenting and your graphic presentation that you sent it to us. The history of that, the destruction of the geometry of the functionality of the space of the coffee area, the most visible changes in the main gallery, the round administration. Now you are proposing another change in what it calls the store. As you see in the picture, clearly you see it's missing part of the circles that Mr. Frank Lloyd Wright did. That encroach his ideas. Probably he may have different ideas in that part. And I found it completely insensitive to do any change in this part. Because I remember when I studied architecture, and one of the studies I had to do about Frank Lloyd Wright. And when I immigrated to this country, I went and I spent a lot of time seeing the wonderful building that he did. It's a masterpiece. I went inside, I was checking everything. And I'm constantly going over there as much as I can. Also, I visit other projects of Mr. Frank Lloyd Wright, such as the Falling Water. And the most important, I think, in this case, I'm going to make my case, is the Kentucky North House. When I was visiting that house, I found that the person that could give you the exhibition of the house, she was a little bit laughing, saying, Mr. Lloyd Wright, what he did is he narrowed the corridor because he believes that people shouldn't be there. Of course, she's laughing because this is completely a farm space, plenty of space. But no, Mr. Frank Lloyd Wright, he has a philosophy in everything. It's his position, and he has a very big ego too. But whatever it is, his contribution was extraordinary to the architectural, to the architecture completely. And now we are seeing a proposal that you're looking profits and more functionality to obtain even more money. That's what I perceive that. And I think it's wrong. My perception is we have to stop to damage the interiors as well as the exterior, because any tourist that coming to New York City is coming to see the Guggenheim Museum, not for the arts, the exhibition of the arts, because of the building is an art. And we have to be extremely careful to keep adding in and removing and changing like a UR has been presented today. And I think it's completely made me feel sad in this case that we have to stop. It has to have one stop and leave this wonderful building for future generation of professionals. Come and see what he did. This is a masterpiece. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Marco. I don't know who's next. Sarah, maybe? Did I do that right? Lita's nodding, so I must have.
We're going to go to Alita.
Oh, okay.
Is Sarah not here, Saida?
Yeah, I think she's left.
Oh, okay. I have to agree. I appreciate that you put a lot of thought into this, and I think the furnishings individually are beautiful and reminiscent of a particular period that you don't see in other gift shops. But I have to agree with Marco that New York City and the Upper East Side are so lucky to have a building like the Guggenheim to explore and to enjoy, not just for the artwork, as Marco pointed out, but for the architecture. Even in the staircases, they're remarkable. And this doesn't feel like a Frank Lloyd Wright space, and it ought to. I don't know much about architecture, as Anthony knows, because I tell him that all the time. But Frank Lloyd Wright, I think one of his themes was a room within a room. And even in the space at the Met, that's a room that he designed, you see the room within a room. And he was so particular that I visited a home he designed. It's the only home in New England that's open to the public in New Hampshire. And the people there were so afraid of him that they bought a TV set, and whenever he came to visit, they put it in the closet because it did not go along with his aesthetics. So this just does not feel like it belongs at the Guggenheim. And for me, the ceiling lighting, I know there are things that you can't help really because you need lights, but as Marco pointed out, the circles on the floor, they're lost. It just doesn't feel like it. And I feel really that it ought to. So while I appreciate your efforts, and you're feeling that for generations, people will be able to use it and appreciate it and not change it. It doesn't feel enough like it. You've kept things, the oak, I appreciate that you're not going with a trend as well, but I think there just needs to be more of something. And I don't know what that something is, but thank you for listening. And thank you for your presentation too.
Michelle?
Yeah, thank you, Adam, for your presentation and for the detail. It was explanatory. I'm sharing the sensibilities that I've heard, but I have some questions. When I look at the two pictures, is that lighting? They look different. Is that the original lighting or not? The lighting design, I mean, in the larger picture on the right, it doesn't look the same as the picture on the lower left. Am I misreading this?
The lighting that's represented here is representative of the lighting that's in the space. It's not necessarily, I don't know if they match up, within a few inches of each other. We are not planning on changing that historic, or I should say that landmarked condition. So
Okay.
we did not go through the process of.
All right, that's fine. That was my question. Are you maintaining the lighting as it was originally designed? Okay, that was my question. The color of the oak in the store furniture, are you replicating the color of the furniture that is there now, or are you changing the color to meet the other elements that are in other areas of the museum, which is the redder tone? I didn't quite get that. I know you're illustrating it in sort of an orange, a yellow, and the museum woodwork is in sort of a reddish oak. So which are you duplicating in the store? Are you keeping what's the color of the wood that currently exists in the store?
We would be looking to utilize the furniture that is outside of the store, that's the original Frank Lloyd Wright furnishings, and use that as the color to move forward. It is actually very, very close. They did a very good job matching it. It does not show up necessarily in my, in my photos, one against the other, but their oak actually is very close to the oak that is presented throughout the majority of the museum. But with the removal of this casework, we would want to be closer to the other casework that exists within the atrium space and things like that. There would not necessarily be a specific piece to tie back to here. So that would be the goal.
Okay, so in the original store, how much of the original furniture are you keeping?
So of the Gwathmey Siegel store, we will not be retaining any of the original perimeter casework. There is no floor casework in the space. So we will be removing the perimeter casework around the room and bringing in new casework.
Okay, so you're not keeping any of it. And therefore, since you're fabricating new furniture, you're going to fabricate it with the colors that exist in woodwork elsewhere in the museum.
Yes, and
correct?
it's correct. And my understanding is that this casework was designed to match that casework. So to go along with the original intent, we would go back to also matching the original Frank Lloyd Wright casework.
Okay, all right, just want to clarify, I didn't get that. Now let me talk about the windows and the film and et cetera, et cetera. How, I didn't quite get how you are getting an additional transparent piece of the wall there. How is that happening?
The so transparent vinyls that have the appearance of almost a glass etch.
Right.
They, depending on that vinyl, we can get it in different opacities and different colors. So we would pick the same white that's used in these solid blocks that are here, that exist in some of the areas of this wall.
Yes, excuse me, I get that. My question is, you have to add film to an additional transparent window or door. Where is that additional transparent?
No, it's
Where is
no,
that
sorry,
coming?
Michelle. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
Michelle, it's an
clarify.
existing window that
Yeah.
if you look at the center photo of the slide that's up now,
Yeah.
that's the window. And that window will not be visible because it will be, or will be only minimally visible as light coming above that movable cabinet, but it will not be visible from inside the store. And so in order to preserve a kind of unity from the outside, this would be the 89th Street side, there will be a film on the inside of the existing window. There's no new windows.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
No problem.
But what are you looking at now when you're inside the store? I still don't get
When
it.
you well,
What are
if you look
looking
at the center, if you look at the center photo,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Adam. It's just if you look at the center photo and you look straight at the center of the center photo, at that little narrow spot at the end of the books, where the books are, at the end of that, there is a window above the counter, and you can look out onto 89th Street.
Okay.
That's it.
That will
That's
be
it?
covered up. That will be covered, Michelle.
I get it.
And that will be partially blocked.
Okay. Thanks for the explanation. I really appreciate it. I still really don't understand the why, but let that be as it may. We'll move on. I think those are really my questions. I'm not enthusiastic about the changes either. I think the charm, I recognize that you want to expand the bookshop a little bit, bring in more product, increase profits, all that. But sort of the charm of this little bookstore is that it's a little bookstore, gift shop, whatever it is, that it's little. And I'm not enthusiastic about the changes. The presentation was excellent, but I would like to see it remain the way it is. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Rich also had raised his hand. I'm not sure if you wanted to add something to what Adam said.
Yeah, am I unmuted now?
You are.
You are.
Okay. I just wanted to add, from the owner side, we take stewardship of the building very seriously. I handle and liaise with LPC for all our applications since I've worked in the building over 20 years. I've worked on the building over 20 years. As part of due diligence, we secured the services of Harbo Architects, Gunny Harbo and Bob Shore specifically of Chicago. They're nationally known for the preservation of many cultural landmarks, including Taliesin West, the Unity Temple. We brought them on. I personally worked with them to go through drawings, all the casework in the building. There is probably only very few pieces of actual Frank Lloyd Wright furniture that still exists, none of which remains in a condition that wasn't either replaced or refinished in the Gwaltney Siegel 1990 area restoration. So what we wanted to do was, through the guidance of Harbo Architects, try to, and understanding that space is not going to be able to remain as it is forever. This furniture is a lot of the built-in cabinetry is falling apart. And a lot of times in the museum, we've had to either replace or refurbish. And knowing that, we wanted them to sort of help guide Event Network into a design that reflected the aesthetic. I just wanted to make that comment, and along with the colors, many of these pieces of furniture have had to be refinished over the years. The actual finish that we've used, and I know this well, I've worked for a dozen years as the chief cabinet maker for the museum. We try to match the actual finish as much as we can actual product that was originally used in the Guelph-Museum area is no longer made. We've worked directly with the company Mohawk to try to continually keep as matching as close as possible, but it's actually impossible to keep a consistent finish all through time. So that's why you see several different colors of finishes within the museum, but with our recommendations and the actual products that we are using now in order to refinish and repair furniture, we will be giving all this information to event networks. So they will have the best information that we have in reproducing the aesthetic that is reflected in the rest of the museum. I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you. We have, I think, Elizabeth.
I think this is a perfectly acceptable change, and I can support it. I absolutely loathe Gwathmey Siegel's edition. I fought for years to stop it. It's antithetical to what Frank Lloyd Wright thought of his building, and I'm sorry it was ever built. But I will vote for this change.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Kimberly?
Thank you. While I don't share Elizabeth's strong feelings about Gwathmey Siegel, I agree with her point that I can support this application.
Okay, Jane?
Honestly, it's I'm really caught between a rock and a hard place. I know these museums, the Guggenheim, every museum is suffering these days because of the pandemic and the fall off in tourism in New York City, but I really just can't bear these retail spaces. They're putting in a bigger retail store at the Frick, as you all know. It's part of that redesign. I find this, these drawings, it's so ordinary. You could be in a Brooks Brothers store with the generic furniture everywhere, even though the color and the edging is allegedly similar to Frank Lloyd Wright, or I guess I shouldn't say allegedly. I agree with Marco. The Guggenheim is such a rare example of an intact architectural masterpiece. You just go into one of the bathrooms and it's curves. It's just so utterly charming and unexpected. And now when you're going to walk into this retail space, it's not going to be charming. It's not going to be unexpected. It's going to look like a place where they just want to get those posters out onto the counter so that you'll buy them. I don't mean to be so brutal. I just don't know what to do about this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Now, look, this is a retail space. Why this particular space was ever landmarked is beyond me. It was never intended by the original architect to even exist. It's not really circular or even semicircular. It was a quarter circle driveway that went underneath the link between the administrative wing, the little round structure, and the exhibition space. And it seems to me that the retail store, which only dates, I think, from 1975, I remember when the driveway was still there. I think we are confusing, all of us except Elizabeth, are confusing Gwathmey Siegel with Frank Lloyd Wright. And having said that sentence, I'm embarrassed to have said that sentence. This is not a special space. The best thing about this space is, in fact, the sort of lozenge-shaped columns that originally defined the driveway. And having that lozenge-shaped column in the middle of the in the middle of the retail space is just fine. And I don't think I'm overstating my my disinterest in the existing retail space, because actually that little window at the end that you're going to block off, it's, even though it is an awkward dead end, it's one of my favorite spaces within that bookstore because of the way that the different geometries, the circular geometry of the old administrative wing and the rectilinear geometry of Gwathmey Siegel's edition come together in a kind of interesting way that reminds you of the round forms. Okay. I do not think we should be spending as much time as we already have discussing this. It's a retail space. Is it perfect? Do I love it in every way? Absolutely not. But it's no bigger than it was before, and it might be slightly more efficient. And that's good news for the museum and the operators. Do we have a motion?
Anthony, can I just make one more comment? Because I appreciate pointing out the curving of that space and then the rectangle of the window at the far end. And that is charming. And of course, we're losing that. That's one thing we are definitely losing. Mm-hmm. You know, okay, you've convinced me to support this, but it makes me extremely, extremely sad, because I do think the vendor, and that's another sad thing, that the Guggenheim actually contracts out its retail space. And I guess all museums do that. I'm so naive. But with that said, I will very reluctantly support the application. And I appreciate what Marco said. I appreciate what Alita said. I really appreciate their comments.
I guess just one more thing before we have hold on, Marco, just before we have a resolution on this. The original design had no retail space.
Wow.
I don't disagree with that. And Frank Lloyd Wright never would have filled in that driveway. But the driveway has been filled in. It is part of the building. It is part of what is protected under the landmarks law. And I think what happens inside that space is a lot less important than the rest of the building. But I think you're right, Jane. I think losing that sort of little funny thing there at the end is a little bit too bad.
The whimsy and the charm is just gone out the window. No. Anyway.
Okay. Now I thought Marco wanted to either say something or propose a resolution. Is that no, you don't? Or yes,
yes. And thank you so much, Anthony. Well, the point is, first of all, let me answer Mr. Avery. He said that most of the furniture is in bad condition. I strongly recommend that he can go and see the Falling Water project. You see this furniture are extremely old, extremely unpleasant probably, but the functionality and the concept that coming from those designs right now is just only for high-end carpentry. So this is one part. The other part is my perception is this building is not only for public, it's also for the future architects that come into this country. And many they're coming to see what he did. And if you put something new, they were misleading what is the concept of this gentleman did. His ideas are incredible, and sometimes probably could be controversial because he has a very big ego, and he has the right to do that, by the way. So the point is right here is, I think the less that we touch, the better. And that is my
Marco, this isn't Frank Lloyd Wright.
I know
this
that.
Is
I know
Charles
that. I know that.
Gwathmey and Robert Siegel.
That's correct.
It's not Frank Lloyd Wright.
You're absolutely right, and that is basically the confusion of everything. If you bring somebody else, they're gonna believe that that is part of the Frank Lloyd Wright building. Why? Because never was created with a different concept, or at least explained in the building saying this is not Frank Lloyd Wright addition.
Well, that's
So
up to, I think that,
something-
Marco, I
something
think that's
has
up
be
to the
established.
Guggenheim.
So this is what I believe, and that it has to be to stop this issue. And you're absolutely right, Anthony. I read carefully the whole application because it interested too much for me. It took me many hours analyze step by step. So I understand that you're absolutely right. This is no Frank Lloyd Wright extension, but the main issue as the whole, it is they combine, they confuse, and that's mislead the real value of the interior architecture of the Frank Lloyd Wright. And with that, if I allow me to say, I don't know if it's possible, I would like to put a motion to disapprove, regardless if somebody want to support me or not. That's fine.
Is there a second, or do we have a counter motion or whatever? Alita, are you seconding? She is seconding a motion to disapprove. Okay, so the motion on the floor is to disapprove, which means yes means no. And Said, if you would call the roll.
Just give me 1 second to unmute everyone.
Sure.
Elizabeth?
Are you?
Oh, I think we lost. Okay. Elizabeth?
Yes.
Oh, she said.
Okay. Michelle?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Anthony?
You didn't have to change.
No.
Okay. Jane?
I'm abstaining.
Marco?
Yes.
Kimberly?
No.
Okay, 1 second while I tally this for you.
Anthony, can I just say something while Said is tallying?
Sure.
For the reasons that you specified and that Jane specified, and someone else who talked about the importance of, maybe it was Jane, the gift shop and revenue producing to the museum, it's very hard to oppose this. And even though it wasn't Frank Lloyd Wright, it still should be more connected in the spirit, I think. And that's why
okay.
I just wanted to say.
Just to
Sorry.
comment, I don't think we've already voted. I don't think the current gift shop is connected to the museum in any way at all right now.
I'd agree with
So
you, but I
this-
think it should be.
Well, I know that, but that's not what's before us.
Well, for me, it kind of was, but we don't need to have this dialogue.
All right.
It's late and I appreciate it. So, I mean, I appreciate
Okay.
your letting me speak. Thank you.
The final vote is 4 yes, 2 no, and 1 abstention.
Okay, so
So do we need a
the,
substitute?
We did not. This was for the disapproval.
Alita, could you just go through the roll call vote again, just really quickly, so I can refresh my mind on how everybody voted?
Said.
Oh, Said. Okay. Elizabeth, Michelle, Alita, and Marco were yes. Anthony and Kimberly were no's, and Jane, you were an abstention.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, well, thank you. I think unless there is old and new, old business or new business.
Well, I just thought, Anthony, we should tell people that David Halpern fell and broke his hand and injured. I don't think he didn't break his whole hand, but he severely broke 2 fingers.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's one thing I just wanted all of you to know, because I think it did really incapacitate him. It's a hand he writes with and everything, and he can't use it for a while. And he has to have surgery on the hand. So I just wanted all of you to know that that's why he's not here tonight. So, and again, let's face it, what a fascinating evening. What incredible buildings we got to look at. you look at that even first application, is it Melissa Myers? What is her name? I wrote it down. Melinda Myers from Fried Frank. She was the land use lawyer for the entire of the Cornell University, all the zoning changes they wanted. I find this just so interesting, this committee. We're so lucky to be on it. In any case, I hope all of you saw the interview with me. Now, of course, we've moved on to Sharon Pope and Will's weekly roundup. But in any case, best to all of you. And I don't know whether we'll have to meet in August or not. We will meet if there are applications that the LPC sends up to us. So thank you very much. And thank you again, Anthony, for stepping in.
No, thank you.
And for your pithy comments on the Guggenheim. Michelle.
Yeah, thanks. A thought. Will we have somebody from the office, if nobody from the committee is in town, on August 9th to go down to Landmarks to read our resolution? We have done that in the past, and I think for that application, it would be really important for us to have somebody read our application or comments into the record.
I will check with Will and get back to the entire committee.
Are they on Zoom or are they meeting in person down at Landmarks?
They've been meeting on Zoom. The public can testify via Zoom, so.
So one way or another, since it's August, I don't know who's going to be what, where. I mean, if I'm here, but I know I'm leaving on vacation, I'm happy to do it. But certainly among all of us and the office, we should have, and the fact that it's a Zoom call, Alita's waving, so she probably wants to add to this. But my feeling is somebody should read this resolution into the record. That's what I wanted to say.
The problem is, Michelle, and I think that's a great point, is that if there's a 2-minute time limit, which there often is at city agencies, there won't be time probably to read the resolution. And so
I understand that. Sometimes it's 2 minutes. It depends how many show up, sometimes 3, but you know what? That's a good point. But it still doesn't mean that somebody shouldn't be there. If you can't read all of the whereases, to just be there to read some of them and emphasize the be it resolves, I think, 2 minutes worth of whatever we can give them, I think is really important. I think that building, if they would be permitted to do that, I think it's a real violation. I was really, I mean, they acted, and the presentation was good. Each element was attractive, but to my mind, they just had complete disregard for the historic nature of the property and the district. I don't know how they came up with any of that. To me, it was all inappropriate. But I really want to make sure, because members of the Landmarks Committee, often they have to be convinced. So I hope somebody can be there. And I'd like to be kept in the loop about if somebody's going to be there and who and what, just keep it in the loop. Because if you need a default position and I'm around, I'm happy to do it.
Thank you, Michelle. We will make sure you are in the loop. I think Melanie Myers, the land use attorney from Fried Frank, said she wasn't really sure it was going to absolutely be on August 9th.
That's
so
right.
We will ask Will or Saida. Are you still with us, Saida?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, Saida, you're going to have to be the point person and making sure we know exactly the date for the hearing. And just let us know, because maybe Michelle could be our person who goes to the Zoom meeting.
Okay, I'll check in with LPC tomorrow.
Okay, are you on vacation, Saida?
I'm not sure yet, but August is our quiet month and we were trying not to have any landmarks applications, so.
Well, it's not up to us. I wish it were, but it's not up to us. But thank you, Saida. So you'll get back to us with a firm date on when that hearing is.
I will.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone. And motion to adjourn. Did somebody make a motion already?
Motion to
Michelle's waving her
adjourn.
hand.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, thank you very
Second.
much, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye. Have a great summer and thank you.
Oh, I don't know. I only wish. Are you still there, Anthony? No. What happened to Anthony? Alita, you're still there.
I know, but I'm leaving.